Here's your disruptive thought for the day. And it's going to take a minute to explain, so bear with me. All right. The problem with capitalism is not capitalism. Capitalism is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Capitalism's ultimate goal is profit. It's to take resources from one person, transfer them to another, and to do that as efficiently as possible. That's what capitalism is supposed to do. The problem is the Lucas effect. When George Lucas made the original Star Wars movie back in the 1970s, he did it for a very low budget, and he did it under severe restraints. I think I heard it was like $10 or $11 million to make that entire movie. And when he began to run over budget, he actually gave up his entire or most of his directorial pay in order to balance the budget, in exchange for which he got all of the marketing or the merchandising rights for the movie, which turned out to be the best contract deal ever made in Hollywood, because obviously, the merchandising rights for Star Wars went off the charts. So he made a ton of money after that. Another way to get around this was he opened up his own companies like ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, to do the special effects, and they got paid to do the special effects, and he owned the company, so he got paid through the back end on that deal. So this is some of the creative ways he got around that, and he created one of the most enduring movies of all time and an entire franchise to go along with it. That is what an artist does when they have restraints. They find solutions to work within the ecosystem they're in order to create their art. But when you fast forward a couple of decades, when he's extraordinarily wealthy and successful and no one will tell him no, and he has all the resources he could possibly want at his disposal, he doesn't have to make interesting creative choices to work around things. You end up with the prequels, which are just terrible movies. And if you're a Star Wars fan, I'm sorry, but objectively, they're bad movies. They are just bad. Some of the best actors in the world today, or at the time, and the best special effects possibly available, and they're still bad movies. That's the Lucas effect, because he didn't really have any obstacles to work around. Nobody was telling him no. No one was saying, hey, this doesn't work. There's nothing, to hold him back. And that leads to lazy creativity, bad creative decisions. And that's why those movies don't work. Now, fast forward. Now, if you apply the same idea to today, when you have a company that is starting off, they don't have the resources, they don't have the capital, so they have to find creative solutions, and they come up with some really innovative stuff in order to succeed. The best businesses do that, and that's why they become successful, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. But then they get to the point where they start getting into politics and lobbying lawmakers and getting laws passed to remove the obstacles. And again, keep in mind that their goal is not creativity. Their goal is profit. That's what capitalism does. So when they begin to remove all those obstacles, they become extremely profitable, but they don't produce better products, and they don't produce things that are good for people and for the world. Instead, they just do whatever's the most profitable. They cut costs. They lay people off. They move manufacturing overseas. They use environmentally questionable procedures. If there's no law preventing it, they'll do things like put poisons or and microplastics and stuff in their products because it's more profitable. That's the Lucas effect. It's the same effect in a different form. This is why I say capitalism isn't in itself inherently bad, but the Lucas effect is. We see capitalism as the end all be all, the solution. And it's not the solution to anything. It's a tool. Economics is a tool. The effects of looking at that tool as the end of everything, the end all be all, is that we get a tool that is harmful to us. And we see that harm every day. We're seeing economically and civil rights wise what following somebody like Elon Musk and letting him have control is doing. And we see it in how businesses are poisoning the environment and laying off people for, in favor of like AI and all these kinds of things. All these things are capitalism doing exactly what it's supposed to do, but it has no boundaries because we've taken those boundaries away. Now, what should those boundaries be? Well, capitalism is a tool. And when you realize it's a tool, the goal of that tool is supposed to be the betterment of humanity. In order to better humanity, you have to understand what it is you're trying to better. If you're trying to better the company, you just profit, and literally humanity doesn't matter. If you put an AI in charge of the company and the AI's goal is to create as much profit for itself, it would have no problem wiping out all of humanity in order to benefit itself. So that's basically how all these companies operate. They don't care about the long-term results. In order to better humanity, you have to keep humanity alive and thriving. So you have to take care of the environment. You have to take care of people. You have to make sure your things don't poison people, cause harm, all those kinds of things. That's what laws are for. And when you implement those laws, you create boundaries to profit, but you also create an environment in which those companies have to be more innovative. They have to find better solutions, which is ultimately creativity. The best way is not to eliminate capitalism altogether, but it's to restrain it with laws to make sure that it doesn't harm the people it's supposed to be helping, which is all of humanity. That's the Lucas effect. That's my controversial idea for the day. Something to think about. Can't wait to hear your comments. Here's the best way I can say it is right now we've structured our culture and our society and our government in such a way that basically we are being used by capitalists. Their goal is to reap profits and enrich themselves at the cost of everything else. As a tool, what we need to use it for is to accomplish our goals as a culture, which is the betterment of all humanity, to survive and prosper and move on in future generations. Instead of being used by capitalists, we need to use capitalists. Instead, we need to see capitalism and capitalists as tools. We point them at a problem we need solved, and we say, we need you to solve this problem, but within these constraints. We need you to provide shampoo for us so we can keep our hair clean, but we need you to do it in such a way that it doesn't destroy the environment, it doesn't poison us. Those are the constraints. Go figure it out. And figure out a way to do that in which you can make money, not by changing the rules, but by working within those rules. That's what I mean by using capitalism to our advantage. We define the rules as a culture by passing laws saying you can't do this. You have to do this. Those are the kinds of things that we do to restrain capitalism and then say, now go solve the problem within those limits. It's the same thing that any artist has to do. You want to create a piece of art and you have to do it within the limits that you have. A lot of musicians, they produce their best work early in their career. They develop a certain level of skill and talent, and then they don't have the resources of big recording studios and unlimited time and to go to their ideal location or all those things. So they have to produce their work under limited restraint conditions, and they produce great work. And as they get more popular and more wealthy and all those constraints are come off and they can do anything they want, their creativity flounders. They aren't as creative. They kind of get stuck in a rut doing the same thing that worked before, which is still appealing, but it's not moving them forward. It's not creating something new. And what we need to do is see capitalists, see those individual people as a resource that we can point at a problem and have them solve it. But we can't allow them to use us as a resource for them to just profit. So we need to put them under restraints. And that needs to happen with good legislation and good laws. And that happens by us as citizens taking actions and getting rid of the politicians who are bought by capitalists and putting in place laws to replace things like Citizens United. So we got to get the money out of the politics. And there's a whole lot of discussion as to how to do that. But we begin to look at what the real problem is. The problem is not capitalism itself. It's how we view it. And once we change the way we view something, we'll change the way we use it. An example of how we as a culture can use capitalism that we've already done that actually worked. So in the 1970s, smog from cars, pollution was getting so bad that we had something called acid rain. The rain was actually acidified, and it was causing harm to the environment and hurting people and all these bad things. Go look it up, Google it, was a thing. And Congress got together and said, okay, we're going to pass a law that says that cars have to eliminate these chemicals from their exhaust in order to better the environment. They held all these hearings, and a bunch of representatives of the car industry from all the major manufacturers came in and they said, we can't do it. It's good to make a device that's going to scrub these chemicals from the exhaust before it leaves the car is going to raise the price of the car tens of thousands of dollars. It's going to make cars completely uneconomical, and it's going to destroy the entire industry. And Congress said, figure it out, because we're passing the law. It's going to happen. Within like a year or two, no more than that, they came up with a catalytic converter. And it only added a couple $100s to the cost of manufacturing a car instead of thousands and thousands of dollars like they claimed. And it eliminated acid rain, and it solved the problem. Capitalism can solve the problem, and it can do it in a profitable way if it's smart. But they constantly are like, no, I don't want to solve that problem. I just want to make money. I want you to remove the barriers from me making money. And we got to say, no, we're not going to remove the barriers. Either you do it within the limitations that we say, because we need to have an environment. We need to have food. We need to have water. We need to have healthcare. We need to have a good standard of living and a quality of life that's worth living. So you have to work within those constraints. And I will guarantee you they will always find a solution. But they look for the easy way by eliminating the barriers. And we need to stop as a culture allowing them to do that. So that's an example of where we as a nation, as a culture, as an entire species can use capitalism to our advantage. We can have cars and we can reduce pollution at the same time, and we can use capitalism to find that solution. But we need to give them restraints. It works. It absolutely works, and it's been proven to work. And we just need to go back to that way of thinking and that way of legislating and that way of electing politicians and say, look, figure it out. If you can't figure it out, you're not a very good capitalist. You're just not creative enough. Go find someone else will find out, figure out a way to do it. So either you're going to be the guy or someone's going to beat you to it. So go get to competing to figure it out. That's a perfect example.